Peace, family. This is your boy Gerald. It is May 22nd, 2021. How is everybody doing? So I'm in the garage. Got the dryer going on in the background, so you might hear some background noise. Taking in the ambiance of silence. Actually, what you don't see is I've got UFC going on right there. It's got it on mute. And, I wanted to share something with you because the devil's work is never done, fam. Never done. And I've noticed that through these last months, it started back in 2012, and I look at where I am now, and I've noticed as you progress, there are different facets of your life that you're going to have to master. Actually, I could sum it up as the direction, the deflection, and the denial. So why those 3 Ds, Gerald? Why? Because through it all, depending on how committed you are to you, you're going to have to not only navigate through that, sidestep the negative, stay grounded, but those things will allow you to see not only how authentic you really are, but the core of what you need to master still. And so why you say that? See, I've come to learn a couple things through this transition. Number one, you dictate your circle. You do. It's not about how you react, but the accountability of the commitment of said action. Who am I talking to? And with that being said, you do realize there is somebody, not only that's connected to you directly or indirectly, there is somebody that looks just like you too, that acts like you, that may have been connected to you indirectly through an action from someone else. And the commonality between that is what defines what you share. But I'll be honest with you, family, I had this feeling this morning, this trigger. And I saw something that struck deep in my core. And I was like, no, this can't be. And I looked, and I looked, and I looked. Because before you can speak on something, you have to know the foundation. Because if you don't, you end up either becoming a hypocrite or you just miss the mark completely. So, what am I alluding to, Gerald? You'll come to understand as you progress, there are going to be certain things that are tied to your life, tied to your spirit, that are bona fide triggers to you. And depending on how you react, will also be the ripple effect of said action. Will it be impulsive? Will it be a position of denial? Or will it be a position of accountability? Now, as you know, family, in 2021, we've seen countless examples of non-accountability, both personally, in a town near you, in a city near you, in a state near you, worldwide. You know something because you've seen it indirectly be transponded so that you can learn from it, or something that impacts you and causes you to either reflect or or you, bottom line, you're gonna act. But let me tell you something, family. Energy attracts energy. One of the greatest lies ever told is opposites attract. No, far from it. But if we don't understand who we are, if we don't understand where we're going, to dream, to manifest, how can we understand the value of what we stand on or stand upon? Who's that for? So right now, some of you may be like, I'm looking back, Gerald, and I used to always say this all the time, and I'm going to throw this back out there. It's May 22nd. Take a breath and think back where you were a year ago today. And when you think back to where you were a year ago today, who was there? Who was not? Was that means of accountability a positive? Was it a negative? What was going on this time last year? If you cannot see growth within the last 365, there's something going on in your life that you have to let go of. And this can be daunting for some of y'all. I've been there. This can be challenging to a point that you have actually allowed yourself to become numb. You may have chose to make decisions to disconnect. You find a way to disconnect from said triggers because it's always tied to the affairs of the heart. It is. It is. But you know what you don't see when it comes to that heart? Courage. Because you can't have courage without fortitude. And you can't have fortitude without having a source. But even that said source, it must be allowed to grow, to tap into not only your insight, but your wisdom. Your wisdom is your story. Because if you're not able to tap into your story, how can you understand your worth? Who am I talking to? So I saw something today. And it made me assess some things. One of the things that we always hold dear are the connections that we've grown thus far. It may have been in a passing hello or solidified in time. We treasure those because that is a benchmark. That is the linchpin to a moment that can be shared, that is relatable. And maybe in that moment, you find compassion. Maybe in that moment, you find strength. But through it all, guess what, family? What is undeniable, it's your story. It's your truth. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that. So, since I've been here, I have really done a lot of soul searching, a lot of assessments. And in that assessments, a lot of truths that have been there the whole time, I had the courage to acknowledge. See, one of the things that I've learned in my story thus far, and it's funny because figuratively I've always said this, not everybody is going to earn the right to know your story, to know what causes a smile, that triggers the ability to ponder, to tap into your strength that you didn't know was there the whole time. Listen, do you realize how unique you are? Do you realize that? Because if you realize that, you would also realize that that makes you a threat too. Why? Because you're not going with the grain. You're taking a path that was systematically designed for you. And the funny thing about that path is it doesn't get any shorter. It is just there. But because we have free will as human beings, spiritual beings first, we cannot place the first foot in front of the second until we embrace who we are. So, what am I getting? Haven't you noticed in the last 5 years, one of the greatest attacks has been on your identity? No, I'm not talking from an economical stand. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the true essence of who you are. Think about it. Because if you saw how priceless that was, the essence of what makes you you, you would also see why some people can't go with you. They won't be there in those moments of celebration or discovery. Why? Because you have a higher purpose. You are meant to perform a certain act in a moment of time. So while we are focused on the economics, we're focused on the global health in regards to the pandemic. Not one person is promoting self. I mean, to the point that, first of all, we all know passion is something that you would do for free. But it seems like everywhere you go, there's a price tag there. And there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. No. Shoot, I got stuff going on. But the one thing that we can't market, the one thing that we can't monopolize, the one thing that we cannot tangibly grasp is time. And when you realize that, think back to all those moments that you allowed yourself to be distracted. All those times that in the midst of your highest highs, or even in the valleys of your lows, what it costs. You know why we go through distractions? to delay our progression of who we truly are, the identity of your purpose. That's why I used to always campaign. I would always tell people, you want to know your friends? Ask them what their purpose is. If they can't tell you what their purpose is, how can they value yours? That's why we are in the season of people being fair weather. They put a market value on who you are, not what you can become. And it's sad. And I think a lot of that has to do with fear of the unknown, fear of the ability to own self. Because when you're able to own self, guess what? The reward is your smile. The reward is having peace of mind, even in silence. The reward is being able to be connected to the now. See, listen, family. Stop worrying about things you can't change. But the beautiful thing about change, you don't need permission to do it. Stop worrying about if such and such is going to be there. Because that all that is nothing but a need to shoulder what you find that makes you insecure. And what is fear? I used to always say, fear is finally everything's a reality. And if you don't like what your reality is, how are you going to value your reward? So, I give thanks every day that I have the ability to wake up one more day, because there's someone who didn't. And yes, it can be disappointing when you are able to acknowledge by just indirectly or directly someone you once knew, like, wow, they're not here no more, or this happened, and you instinctively want to protect them, and you can't. Why? Free will. That's why, I was sitting out here and I had this story come into my spirit. I said, you know what? I need to write this down. And I will. But I'm just going to give you the gist of it. And I know this is going to connect to somebody. Y'all remember the poem Footsteps? It's similar to that. There was a person, it could be male or female. Every day they would get up, start their day, do their routine as they normally would. Nothing out of the ordinary would change. They were committed to the pattern. Then one day, they decided to do something different. And while going home, they decided to take this road. And this road, you couldn't see the end of it. It was just long. And as the person decided to take that path, they looked to the left of them, to the right of them. And at times they would look through the rear view and all they would see is the road in which they had drove. And as they were driving down that road, they saw the landscape start to change. They kept going. As they started going down that road, they noticed that the road's terrain started to shift. Where there was areas where it was smooth, it got jagged. The areas that were paved, there were potholes. There were areas of the road that caused them to second guess if they should keep going. But there was still a drive within them. Keep going. Not knowing, not realizing, they had been driving on that road well over an hour. And they're looking out the window and they're kind of out there, And at first, the road seemed like it may have been where a subdivision had been planned. And you know how when you go to an area where they're rezoning the area, they're going to build houses, you have the road first. You might have markers. And they're just riding around. But in the back of their mind, they're saying, well, I need to make a note of this because I'm looking at the sunlight. They were worried about if it was going to get dark. And they're just riding down this road. They got the music going on, whatever. And they're just in the moment. Finally, they get to an area of the road where it looks like a cul-de-sac. And they get to it, and they see this slight little hill. And instead of turning around in the cul-de-sac and going back, they think they see something on the other side of the hill. They get out. It's just them. All this, I want to say pasture, and you had some forestry area and such, areas where there were wildflowers growing. They get out, and they notice that there was a path that had been made. Kind of hesitant at first. They said, well, I got my cell phone. I'll keep my mind focused. I ain't got nothing else to do but go home. I'm just going to go see where this path goes. Get out the vehicle and they start walking down this path. And at first, there's nothing but clearing. And the more and more they go, they start to notice that there was shrubs, wild shrubs and brush. But they could still see. And what they discovered was, it looked like a lake. Being committed to that path, they were determined to get to a place where the lake could be seen, not knowing they had actually gone up an incline. And being that they had committed to going up that incline of that hill, they said, well, I'll give it another 30 minutes or so. After that, I'm going to just turn around and go back because I don't know where I'm at. I need to, but they was committed because they wanted to see that view. So as they're almost on the top of the hill, and they realize that if I just go a little further, I can get a better view of what I think is a lake down there. Because the whole intent was they wanted to take a picture. They want to encapsulate it. So they get to a point where they think it's the summit. Not knowing where they were, there was a drop off. Common sense would kick in and say, hey, you've never been out there. You need to be cautious where you step. But be mindful of your surroundings because they were losing daylight. To walk a little further. Little did they know, they had walked on the tip of a drop-off, which was really a cliff. Realizing that they were in imminent danger, they looked as far as they could. They took in the air that was breathing upon them, and they thought, if I had not committed to riding all this way, taking that path, I wouldn't have been able to discover this view that was intended for me to see the whole time. Here's a caveat. As they looked down, it was the most calm water that they ever saw in their life. They were grateful, but fearful in the same breath. And while they were there, a fear went over them. A disappointment went over them because they realized they were there by themselves. That was a moment. We used to call it back in the day a Kodak moment where you had, that was something that you wanted to share with that significant person. Maybe family, a friend. That was a moment. It was an apex moment. But they were sad because they were by themselves. Then, and only then, they realized they saw a pattern with their lives. They realized if they did not commit to themselves, they wouldn't have seen the challenges that were ahead of them. They wouldn't have understood what it would have taken to have the fortitude to keep going. They would not have gotten the reward, even for a brief moment, of surveying what was below, as well as the risk it took to own it. So what does that have to do with everything, Gerald? When you look at your life, you have to be authentic with it. If you don't like where you are, you must be courageous to change it. But before you can change it, you must acknowledge what needs to be changed. Now, you may be wondering, well, they still saw it by themselves. They still didn't get to share it with a person of significance. Yes, they did. Because the reward was a memory. The reward was an empowerment. The reward also showed them what they were capable of if they decided to see their worth. That's for somebody. I'm going to write this down. So, when you go through setbacks, when you have disappointments, see, the greatest disappointment you're going to ever have will not be with yourself. It'll be your environment. See, if you didn't get that phone call from such and such, or such and such didn't do what they said they were going to do, you feel a certain kind of way. Why did you have the expectation that it would? Why? Because we base it off of ourselves, off of our weaknesses compared to our strengths. Your greatest strength is your truth, fam. Always will. Because there'll never be another you. Now, there's so much I want to show you guys, but it's not time yet. And I've gotten to a point now, the things that will be are going to be. But you got to claim that too. You got to claim it. But what's required is you put that work in. Work is nothing but investment. Investment is nothing but commitment to see it through. How about your smile? When's the last time you seen that? When's the last time you actually had a genuine sleep? I mean, slumber. I mean, to be refreshed, to be made new. Because you know the body has ability to heal itself. Don't give up on yourself. Because when you decide to give up on yourself, those dreams go right along with it. And keep in mind, fam, the world is still waiting for those gifts and talents you were born with. Yes, the moment you took your first breath, that covenant was made. So, I'm going to be quiet. Love to hear from you. Make this weekend a day that you can reflect, replenish, stay focused. But no matter what, continue to be you. Always stay blessed. Peace.